Hello and welcome to Act One, a Canadian take on news events. I'm your host, Gordy Canuck, and I have my co-host, Max the Wonder Dog. If he wants a treat, a biscuit, I don't know. He seems pretty worn out. He's on his little doggy bed, and what? Doesn't look like he's interested. Oh well, at any rate, we are Wednesday, the 17th of December, 8 days when tomorrow will be a week until Christmas. So Merry Christmas, everyone. If you're new and just checking me out for the first time, I welcome you to fill up the live chat. Let me know where you're from. What part of the world? Are you Canadian like me, American, somewhere else in the world, whatever the case. I'm going to be talking tonight about kind of getting onto a theme lately, going to be talking about the pharmaceutical industry, specifically the broader, what I refer to as the industrial medical complex, and also some experiences I had today. I recorded a video last night that I uploaded this morning. And then at 10 a.m. This morning, I engaged in a Zoom call interview with a researcher at the University of Western Ontario, a woman with a PhD who's studying ethical concerns of those who profess to be anti-vaccine, which, broadly speaking, I fall into that camp now. I didn't used to. I didn't used to be an anti-vaxxer, but um, my trust in the medical field, in medical professionals, is probably about as low as it can get. But Max has shown up. Come on up. Come say hi. Come up. Come up. Come say hi. This is Max, the Wonder Dog. Come on. The Wonder Pup. He's only four months old, 4.5. Get your treat. Go ahead, grab it. He's having trouble. Boy, is this ever engaging content, hey? There we go. Max has his treat. And he'll take it to his doggy bed and eat it, and that's where he's gone. Max came into the family November 18th. Uh, our newest dog, sadly, my previous dog, Candy, passed away on the Tuesday after Labor Day. And so a couple months later, we have Max. 100%. Everyone wants to know boy or girl, boy, Max, and everyone wants to know breed. And Max he's got border collie, he's got boxer, he has Springer Spaniel, probably some lab thrown in. He's a mutt, and I love mutts. At any rate, I wanted to talk about what happened in the morning. I had an interview, Zoom call interview with a researcher again, Western University of Western Ontario, someone with a PhD, and she's doing a paper, is involved in research regarding the ethical concerns that individuals who are anti-vaccine have. And so she asked me a number of questions. I answered as best I could, and I think it went very well. I was pleased to see that she didn't engage in any of the gaslighting that is so common nowadays, or in strawman tactics. It was all very factually based. I enumerated my concerns. I said I was hoping, you could refute or at least point to some examples that might, give me reason to revisit the way I approach things, the way I view things. I'm not open, or I'm not averse to examining, challenging my points of view. Uh, why, and we talked about the fact that my lack of faith in the pharmaceutical industry in general and the medical profession as a whole. A lot of it stems from the COVID era, when we saw so much weaponization of science and the propaganda machine going into overdrive. And I talked to her about a number of different things. See, Nancy has shown up. Thanks for showing up. Nancy is one of the moderators. Her and Danny, both from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And that's just in case I get spammed or trolled, which thankfully doesn't happen often, but it does happen from time to time. But please fill up the live chat. Nancy and Danny both give everyone a long leash. You have to go, you've got to go over the top to be censored on this. I'm very much, and Nancy and Danny likewise, very much free speech, pro free speech absolutists, almost absolutists. But while I was talking to this woman, her name was Sarah. Uh, some of the topics we covered are, you know, why I'm now okay. She could understand why I might question the COVID vaccine. I enumerated the fact that instead of running separate phase one, separate phase two, separate phase three, that they rushed it through at warp speed, and that I was willing, at the beginning, I was willing to I was taking a wait and see approach. Let's just see. I know everyone's getting it. Let me see how things work out. If everyone's fine, no one's getting sick with COVID, no one's having any adverse events, then Bob's your uncle. I would have probably gotten it. But I said, obviously, everyone I knew getting it, pretty much everyone, was still getting sick with COVID. Then there were so many severe health events happening amongst my tiny circle: strokes, heart attacks, aneurysm, deaths. And I said, I can't prove causation. Correlation does not prove causation, but it was simply too much, too quick for me to dismiss the possibility of causation. And so I decided not to take it. And then she asked how that impacted my views on the broader vaccine schedule, MMR, all the rest, polio. And I said, that I didn't know very much at all before COVID. I didn't know what an adjuvant was. I didn't know the vaccines contained trace elements of aluminum or mercury or these other compounds. And I openly asked her if she could point me toward a long-term study, a large population long-term study that measured the health of unvaccinated individuals against vaccinated individuals. I told her I've looked, but I haven't been able to come across any information that shows a study done over a long duration with a large population. And it's my understanding that such a study can't be done because the uptake on vaccines like MMR, which is now MMRV, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, or varicella, however that is pronounced, the chickenpox vaccine. I said, my understanding is because uptake is so high, 98% or so, that there isn't a significant enough population of unvaccinated people to measure against. And I brought up the fact that, with COVID, they destroyed the placebo groups by unblinding the trial for Moderna and Pfizer, and then dosing the placebo group, damn near the whole thing. Few people in the placebo group did decline the vaccine, but not many. And so it made any meaningful comparison, rendered it impossible. What's the rate of myocarditis in the dosed arm? Okay, it's 1 per 500, 1 per 1,000, whatever it is. Okay, that's what it is in the dosed group. What about the placebo group? Well, we don't have enough people in the placebo group to compare it. Well, that's wonderful. And As I say, I think it was a productive interview. I hope the interviewer, I hope this Sarah individual, I hope I gave her pause for thought, because it strikes me that she was very much had bought into the narrative. And she seemed somewhat surprised when I told her that early in the pandemic, I'd been attending a church with a gentleman who lost his housing situation, and he ended up in a homeless shelter. And I used to visit him about once a week, pick him up at the homeless shelter, take him to a drive through. We'd get some McDonald's or Burger King, get him some burgers, and just hang out for an hour or so. And I said, if there's a deadly pandemic ravaging the population, it should be hammering, in my non-expert view, a homeless shelter. And here I am, and if this whole idea of the chain of transmission, well, you know, as was said by so many, I should have been making an end of life plan. Remember when they told you that if you're deciding not to get the COVID jabs, you should make an end of life plan now. And man, oh man. Anyway, it was, as I say, it was a very interesting conversation. But what it led me to think about was the manner in which medical science in general and the pharmacy industry in particular, how they've taken on the trappings of a religion. There's almost there's a religiosity to the manner in which people approach the medical profession, broadly speaking. It has become a god. And similar to the structure of an organization like the Roman Catholic Church, where in the Roman Catholic Church, you have the Pope, then you have the cardinals, then you have the bishops, and you have the priests, then you have the brotherly and sisterly orders, and then you have the great unwashed. Well, I think it's similar. Who would be the Pope? A Pope-like figure would be this Dr. Tedros with the World Health Organization, or maybe Anthony Fauci in the context of Canada, Dr. Theresa Tam. They're at or near the top of this pyramid. And then below them, you have highly accredited individuals, Nobel Prize winners, individuals who have big followings on CNN. We have Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and these individuals, and there are others here on YouTube. There's a Dr. Z. There are all kinds of these individuals. And and it's almost structured the same. The bigger the name, the bigger the profile. They have, you have a pope, you have cardinals, you have bishops. I look at someone like Anthony Fauci, and I would view him as being something of the pope of medical science. At one point during the pandemic, he said, I am the science. And for those who are familiar with Roman Catholic theology, there is this concept of papal infallibility, wherein whenever the Pope issues a decree on a matter of religious law or something to that effect, that he's incapable of error. He is God in a fashion. His word is the word of God. He is infallible. And when Fauci said, I am the science, it kind of takes on those same trappings. And this is disconcerting if you're in a world where you recognize that there are a lot of lies, a lot of lies. And what happened, and where my thought process has been taking me, is back during the period of the Reformation, there were individuals like Martin Luther who dared to question the authorities, who dared to question Rome and the Pope. In the case of Martin Luther, a major one was the selling of indulgences, these getting to heaven free, give us $5,000, $10,000, or whatever the monetary equivalent was back then, florins or whatever currency was being used, and you can lift a dear departed soul out of purgatory and get them into heaven. Or you yourself can get a get into heaven free card by paying Rome, because Rome had big expenses. Rome was building massive churches. Rome was pretty much an empire, and priests lived in luxury. And that kind of, lifestyle requires bucks. Nancy's saying that that doesn't sound very kosher. The idea of buying your way into heaven, I assume, is what you're referencing to. Not to me either. And Martin Luther, he wrote, I forget exactly, it was called the 98 Thesis or something. There was a number. He had a number of points. The main one I remember being the selling of indulgences. And he nailed it to the cathedral door, and Rome basically put a death sentence on his head because he was now an apostate to the Roman Catholic faith for challenging the earthly leadership of the church and what they were doing. Does this same type of thing happen within the medical community, within that church? What has taken on the trappings of a church? And I would argue, yes, it has. You look at individuals, and there are so many prominent individuals mentioned on this channel before. Dr. Luc Montagnier, a Nobel Prize winning virologist, he went counter narrative. This is almost like a bishop going out and taking Rome to task. He contradicted St. Anthony Fauci. Fauci had said that the virus originated in a wet market in Wuhan, China, a bat and human interaction. And Luc Montagnier, in his expert Nobel Prize winning opinion, he said, no, this was created in a lab, and he became a heretic. And there are countless others. Dr. Michael Yeadon, another highly prominent individual in the medical field of medical sciences. He was a former vice president at Pfizer. He also was one of that company's chief science officers. He had left Pfizer and had started his own biotech, which was sold to Novartis, according to Forbes magazine, for an estimated $1 billion. Whale has shown up, and he's writing, when they say all roads lead to Rome, I'd always thought it was a reference to money. It flows to Rome. Well, that's, the thumbnail to my video tonight. It has a lab coat and a stethoscope and a guy holding money. And when we look at Rome, so much of what motivated the Roman Catholic Church was money. And it's not just Rome. I don't want to be any of my friends who are Roman Catholic, please don't take offense, because I belong to the Christian Reformed Church, which is every bit as flawed, broken. The devil is at work in our churches. So, Rome just makes for a better example because it's so massive. Rome was huge, and it still is. And the industrial medical complex, it is massive. Danny has shown up, and don't worry about being raped. Ha ha ha. Sorry, I'm raped. Huh, very cute. And saying bonsoir to Nancy, ma belle, my lovely. Uh, Everyone's saying hi to each other. And I love what Danny is writing. And that's the ultimate thing, whether you're Roman Catholic, Christian Reformed, Baptist, Methodist, I don't care. What matters is what Danny has put in the live chat. Jesus is Lord, he is King. And recognize that the earthly leadership you have in whatever denomination you happen to belong to, there is no perfect church. And recognizing that will allow you to discern when there are potential flaws. But what happens so often is that people become wrapped up in their institutions that the institution becomes more important than God. Or in the case of the industrial medical complex, where doctors swear something called the Hippocratic Oath, going back to ancient Greece, Hippocrates, an ancient Greek philosopher, Hippocrates, and it was from his writings that we have the Hippocratic Oath, which I cannot recite, but I know the main two key elements of the Hippocratic Oath are this: ease your job as a doctor is to ease pain and suffering and to not cause harm. So do no harm, ease pain and suffering. That is your goal, according to the Hippocratic Oath, as a doctor, as a physician. Now, has the medical industrial complex always adhered to that Hippocratic Oath? It's a wonderful oath, but have they always lived up to it? No. We have to look no further than our friends to the south, the Americans, with their Tuskegee. Some people say Tuskegee. I believe it's pronounced Tuskegee study, which ran for about 40 years from the 1930s to the 1970s. And what US government medical officials did in the employ of the US government, medical officials, many of whom I'm assuming would have taken the Hippocratic Oath about doing no harm and easing pain and suffering. And instead, what they did was they took individuals, predominantly and maybe exclusively poor Black individuals growing up living in Alabama, Tuskegee, Alabama, and they wanted to track the progression of syphilis while providing no treatment. No treatment. We'll give them placebos, tell them that they're being treated, and we'll track how syphilis, how it proceeds through, over the course of their shortened lifetimes. And that study went on for 40 years, even after penicillin had been invented and would have eased their suffering, which is what the Hippocratic Oath calls on the medical profession to do. They could have cured, eliminated the pain and suffering that these men were experiencing due to, having syphilis. But rather than do that, they let them suffer and eventually die. And for that crime against humanity, which is what it was, that is a crime against humanity without question. How many people went to jail? How many people were charged? 0 on both counts. No one was ever charged with any crime. The only outcome was that in the 1990s, during the Clinton administration, the US federal government issued a formal apology. Sorry about what we did to you. That was it. And this is the entity that the great unwashed are pretty much expected to place their blind faith, hope, and trust in. Trust in Big Pharma. Roll up your sleeve. Why? Because it's the medical profession. They adhere to the Hippocratic Oath. But do they? Or do they serve a different master? And reference the thumbnail to this video with the doctor holding the big wad of cash. Is that what they are worshiping? Just going to catch up on what's being said. Whale is asking if there are double oaths at play, one may ask, and then at which point, which one is the primary? What is the primary oath? It's almost like incorporations, so quite often have a mission statement or a value statement. And it will talk about one, delivering value to the shareholders, and two, providing ethical and needed and, putting the customer first. We're going to deliver shareholder value while putting our customers first. But what happens when those two values collide? What if delivering value to shareholders, meaning increasing revenue and dividend payments, et cetera, which the shareholders want, what if in order to do that, you have to screw your customer base over? Which which is the primary motivation? And I think in a lot of cases, doctors are more concerned with their pocketbook than with their patients' well-being. How many doctors, I wonder, wanted to advise their patients against? You've got a 20-ish-year-old kid, 15, 16, 18-year-old kid, perfectly healthy, never been sick a day in his life, and he's concerned that maybe the risk of myocarditis is not worth any benefit he might get. And what if that there was a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, just to be clear, I want to tread carefully, but what if there's a doctor who felt, yeah, the risk is greater than the any potential benefit, and was to recommend publicly, yeah, don't get the shot, or I'm going to give you an exemption. Look what happened to Dr. Francis Christian, another apostate member of the industrial medical complex. Dr. Francis Christian was a teaching surgeon at the University of Saskatchewan who went public suggesting that for healthy children, that the risks associated with the COVID vaccines, no long-term safety profile. We don't even know about this new platform that had never once rendered a viable approved product. We don't have a long-term safety profile on it. And he basically expressed the opinion that children maybe shouldn't get the COVID jabs, and the University of Saskatchewan took away his teaching privileges. He basically had his career destroyed. This was a man who was a co-editor at a medical journal, not a quack, but like Martin Luther, putting up his protest on the cathedral door, the medical industrial complex. They couldn't issue a death sentence on him, but they could certainly kill his career, and they did. And that happened to a lot of doctors who dared to go against metaphorical Rome. So, yeah, double O set play. I think that's a good comment, Whale. Danny's writing, worry not, Whale. It's me, Danny. Don't know what happened to my hand. Oh, okay. Danny Copeman has to flip between a couple of handles, but either way, I know who he is. And Danny's telling me that Tuskegee is pronounced with a hard G. Tuskegee. Tuskegee. Oh, I give up. I give up. And Danny is saying the truth must not come out because it hurts the bottom line. I think things are so bad. I think that so many are so all in their worship of the industrial medical complex and pharmaceutical products that the truth does not matter. I think their belief supersedes any evidence that could be presented to them. I think we saw that in the case of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, when the news of the abuse going on, child abuse, sexual abuse, when the stories became so overwhelming, there was still a significant number of Roman Catholic, members of that body that refused to believe it. They refused to believe that this, and this is where I talk about, as Christians, Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, not the Christian Reformed Church, not the Baptist Church, not the Pentecostal, not Rome. Our salvation is through Jesus. It is not through the administration of some political religious body. That's just a view I had on my own. And I wanted to tie on Wednesdays, I bring in my religious faith. Danny has made this suggestion on several occasions, and I like it. The idea to have Wednesday be, he suggested something of a Bible study. I, quite frankly, I'm not comfortable with that because I'm not a biblical scholar. I did not go to seminary or a Bible college, so I don't feel particularly qualified to hold a Bible study, but I have no compunction about sharing my faith and about sharing, what the Bible says to me. And earlier today, a passage came to mind from the 121st Psalm, which is one of my favorite Psalms. I've talked about it on here before. It's the one, I lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence will my help come? And I've got it here in front of me. I lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And I've done earlier videos on this talking about, in ancient Judea, in the Holy Land, in at the time of Christ and before. If you looked up to the hills, if I look up to the hills now, I go, wow, that looks great. Oh, look at the trees, look at the sky again, and it looks amazing. I'm not afraid when I look to the hills. But in the context of that time, the hills were dangerous. That's where nefarious robbers, you weren't safe to go wandering in the hills. So when people would look to the hills, it was a way of saying, you know, I look to the dark alleys. I look to the rundown parts of the city. Now I think that is more if it was being written today, one might say, I walk through the city and look down the dark alleys. From whence does my help come? Uh, and my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. But it's the last verse of this psalm, the eighth and last verse, that came to my mind earlier today. And that was the verse is this: the Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. There is faith that ultimately God is in control, God is in charge, and that the Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth. But this was written at a time and for centuries afterward, for people who had a faith in a creator God. And that faith in a creator God in the Western world certainly has largely gone away. And so we are still human beings, we are religious creatures. And it's just simply a matter of where do we place our worship? Where do we face play, where do we put our faith, trust, and belief? And I think a lot of people have given up on a belief in a creator, all knowing, all seeing, all loving, all caring, all wise God. And instead, they've looked for an alternative. And I think many have turned to the medical industrial complex. Because I did an earlier video a week or two ago talking about a passage from Job about how man is how man is born to suffer, just like the sparks fly up from a campfire. It's a passage in the book of Job that I'm modernizing somewhat. Uh, man is born to trouble as the sparks fly upward, I think is the passage. It's like campfires, sparks go up. It's just natural, it happens. Life is hard. And in previous generations, going back millennia, we would look to the Lord God, creator of all things. Well, the problems of this world, even though we've lost faith in the Lord God, creator of all things, the problems of this world still exist. There's still pain, heartache, sorrow, sickness, misery. And so people need a place to put a religious belief in, they've got to find some religious way to confront all the troubles of this world. And one of the major troubles is health. And so, by God, hello, Big Pharma. You'll save all my you'll save all my you'll cure all my problems. And if anyone dares to badmouth your God, you know, you may not go Bondi Beach on them, but you're going to gaslight them. You're going to straw man their arguments. You're going to do whatever you can to protect your God. And I think a lot of people in today's world treat the medical industrial complex, the medical scientific community, oh, they're gods. Well, what about Dr. Michael Yeadon? Oh, he's an apostate. He has left the faith. He's a heretic. Well, what about Dr. Francis Christian? Oh, another apostate. Or what about, Dr. Asim Malhotra? The guy who's on BBC, one of Britain's leading cardiologists. Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking. He's lost his way. He's lost his way. And I think the analogy between the two is incredibly very fitting. Let me read on. Danny writes that it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. Mark Twain. Once someone has been fooled, to admit that you have been duped is a pill that a lot of people cannot swallow. I give this as an example where, and I've used this before, where you have a mother who has a teenage daughter, and we all know this type of mother who just loves to brag about, my daughter Sylvia. Sylvia is so amazing. She helps out at a homeless shelter. She tutors kids in younger grades or who are struggling. She volunteers at the youth center. My daughter, I've raised the most amazing daughter in the world. And that is what the mother is, constantly bragging about. And then that same mother goes into Sylvia's bedroom, opens her top drawer, and finds drugs and birth control, condoms and what have you. Now it's all shattered. It's all coming crashing down. She doesn't want to believe it. She confronts the daughter, and the daughter says, "Oh, those aren't mine. I took them from a friend of mine. She was thinking about having sex, and I told her not to. And the drugs, she was starting to use drugs, and the mother actually, oh, thank you for rebuilding the house of cards that is my impression or what I've constructed about who you are." And that's what we've done. I think that's what a lot of people have done with the medical community, with the scientific medical community. They built this magnificent cathedral, but it's a house of cards. And Tuskegee, well, it doesn't really matter. What about all these thousands of doctors who signed the Barrington Declaration? Oh, they're all quacks. This is my church. This is my faith. This is my belief. You dare not question it. Or, they become as devout as Muslims going to Mecca, and you dare not contradict their God. And the pharmaceutical industry, one of the points I wanted to bring up is that during the George H.W. administration, toward the end of the Reagan administration and on into George H.W., we had the war on drugs. Do you remember that? The war on drugs. But wait a minute. Drugs are the main product of Big Pharma. That's what they produce. drugs. Well, not the drugs that we went to war against were marijuana. Marijuana was the drug that we went to war with. Heroin was the drug we went to war with. And most will know that marijuana is derived from cannabis, a naturally occurring plant. That was part of the war on drugs. Heroin comes from opium. It's an opiate. I was reading up on this just before doing the video. Just wanted to be clear. There are two categories. There are opiates, and then there are opioids. And what is the difference? An opiate is derived from the poppy. An opioid is the synthetic chemical version of what comes from the poppy. And so the war on drugs was a war on natural remedies, natural drugs, versus while at the same time promoting the synthetic chemical versions. And we all saw what happened. The pharmaceutical industry went all in on medical marijuana. They went all in, but it created such a conflict in the minds of many people who had been programmed for generations. It started with me. They hit us with films in schools. A lot of kids think they can handle marijuana, but before they know it, they moved on to harder drugs. The next thing you know, they're like this guy, and they show you someone shooting up in an alley. It's the gateway, it's the entry. And that kind of propaganda, especially I experienced as a kid, I have no compunction, no problem in admitting that it worked on me. It worked on me for a long time. I was very averse to, and I viewed even marijuana as, oh, it's a drug. Now, in and around the age of 17, 18, grade 12 or 13, in my era, Ontario, there were 5 years of high school, grade 9, 10, 11, 12, and then grade 13 as well. And it was in grade 12 or 13 when I finally, for the first time, tried marijuana. And I remember the first time trying it, taking a hit on a joint, and I was so hypersensitive. What's going to happen to me? I really didn't experience anything, but I think because my senses were so tuned up, I was so focused in on that I didn't do anything to me. At any rate, let's read on. Whale is writing that that he blames the legal political process of lobbying as the explanation for surface corruption. Money talks. The pharmaceutical industry in the United States is one of, if not the biggest lobbying group in the United States. You have the arms industry, you have the gun industry, the NRA, but at or near the top is the pharmaceutical industry. And I've been watching a lot of videos of late, and we've been, seeing all these stories in the media about measles. Kids are dying of measles. And in a video that I did, the one that I dropped this morning, I made mention of the fact that there's a lawyer who's representing a family whose child has been listed as a measles death. And according to this family's lawyer, he has spoken with the child's medical team, and he's saying that the child did not die of measles. And he likewise says that the other measles death being reported in West Texas, San Antonio area, that that family isn't a client of his, but he's spoken to the medical professionals that were involved in that case, and he's stating that that child did not die of measles either. Now, some will say, well, he's a lawyer. If you're all in on the medical industrial complex, the same way that people looked to shut down any talk of sexual abuse in the Roman Catholic Church, oh, they're just after money. That's what they say about this lawyer. Well, he's not a medical professional. He's just chasing money. The thing is, you can't sue pharmaceutical companies for their products. They have immunity. And that goes beyond just the COVID vaccines. So what's his motivation for lying? And we've all seen it happen already. I've mentioned it in the video again this morning, and I've talked about it too many times about Natty Spitzer. It's Spitzer. And he went by the name Natty, 14-year-old kid, dies of stage 4 terminal brain cancer, and they tried to list it as a COVID death. And I would argue that it was strictly for the purposes of trying to get children to take the COVID vaccine. We got a poster child, 14-year-old, tragic death. Beautiful family pictures, and you can sell it, you can market it now. Look at this, wonderful, vibrant, young little 14-year-old kid. Here are these pictures of him from when he was 7, 10, 12. And now COVID came along and he died of COVID. Great marketing, but it was a lie. He didn't die of COVID. He died of terminal stage 4 brain cancer. And, these are the ones we know about. How many do we not know about? They're saying now that in Ottawa, 3 children have died of flu. But that's what they're saying. Is it true? I don't know. I have my doubts. I wonder, were these children likewise, suffering from a terminal illness? I don't know. The journalists in this country don't ask the questions. And so, Danny is quoting Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus, chapter 6, verse 12. I love this quote because it speaks about something that does tie in the scientific world. Because within the science of what is called theoretical physics, I'm not averse to science. You have this concept of a multiverse, of multiple dimensions that we have, the 4 dimensions that we can perceive. We've got depth, height, width, depth. And then there's the dimension of time that we can mentally conceptualize. But theoretical physics holds that there are potentially an unlimited number of dimensions. Some have called it the multiverse and hidden worlds, if you will. And Ephesians 6:12 says this, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Need to lubricate my vocal cords, which I'm doing with coffee, a diuretic, but it's liquid. And then Danny goes on to say, scientism, a belief system, versus science. And I would say we have the same problem in our churches. You have people who are into the ritual becomes more important than the reason behind the ritual. And so now, scientism is worshiping. The Bible makes many references to there are admonishments to not worship the creation, but to worship the creator. And there are a lot of people who have placed total faith in there are people taking handfuls of medication every day. And this world we live in, where we're born to suffer and to trouble and to anguish, like sparks floating up from a campfire. It's going to happen. People want relief. And we have a world that tells us, and the industrial medical complex tells us, are you anxious? Take a pill. Can't sleep? Take a pill. Overweight? We have a pill for that. Depressed? Sad? We got a pill for that too. Can't stop smoking? We have a pill for that. Whatever ill you suffer from, invariably we have a medication. Having trouble, hey big guy, you can't perform in bed anymore. Here's a pill, 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 pill. They've got a product for everything. But so you take one of their pills and then you gain weight. Well, I'm putting on weight. Well, don't worry, we have a pill for your weight gain. I'm diabetic now. Don't worry, we have a pill for your diabetes. Well, my diabetes is leading to my kidneys failing. Don't worry, we have medication to treat failing kidneys. And if they fail totally, well, then we'll hook you up to a dialysis machine at a clinic in town here. Ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. And there is a reason, I haven't said this for a while, but the Bible tells us to fear not. The words fear not appear in English, the English translation. The words fear not appear 365 times. During the COVID era, we saw in spades the effort to drive fear. That's what the news was. Panic porn television. They wanted to scare you. It looks, Armageddon. It looks like Armageddon out there was a headline that I saw promoted by a commentator. Why are they doing this? It looks like Armageddon out there. Or, the tsunami of death continues at the Pine Ridge Nursing Home in Bobcaygeon, Ontario. Oh my God, tsunami of death. Because a scared, fearful population is easy to manipulate, easy to control, and they wanted, but the fear had a purpose because they basically created a scab of fear. They wanted people picking at that scab constantly, and then they came along and they said, Big Pharma is going to save all your is going to solve all your problems. Roll up your sleeve twice, and you'll have long lasting, durable protection against infection. And you won't get this horrible respiratory virus that's leading people to be put into induced comas and hooked up to ventilators. Remember the reporting, panic porn reporting. And I would ask, what was the protocol at the beginning of COVID? What was the treatment? How did you treat someone? I've got COVID. I'm having trouble breathing. I got a dry, non-productive cough, low-grade headache. I'm running a mild temp. What can you do for me? Go home, and if you're struggling to breathe, give us a call. That was the treatment. Someone came in with the flu, which has symptoms very similar. Matter of fact, in terms of symptomology or whatever the word is, according to the symptoms, everything, all the published materials said, you couldn't differentiate based simply on symptoms. Is it the flu? Is it COVID? I don't know. But someone came in years previous with the flu, suffering from the exact same symptoms of COVID, they would be treated. But when it was COVID, go home, call us if you can't breathe. Why? Why? Then Joe Rogan does a podcast and he tells the world that he went to see his doctor and that his doctor prescribed a small little cocktail of medications, zinc in combination with ivermectin and one or two other things. And he makes a very full, fast, and rapid recovery. And what happens? they start telling people on CNN that Joe Rogan took horse medication. He's taking veterinary medication, ignoring the fact that ivermectin has a human formulation. They never mentioned that. They didn't say that. And they never said it. While ivermectin is a veterinary medication, there is a human formulation and it's widely used, widely prescribed. They never said that. They wanted people thinking that Joe Rogan, this is straw manning, they wanted people thinking he was taking some veterinary horse paste. It was disgusting. I didn't know this. Danny's given me something going back to the marijuana bit, and saying that marijuana is a Mexican slang. It's a colloquial term for cannabis. Oh, okay. Marijuana. All right. I didn't know that. My Spanish, poquito. Uh, and Nancy remembers the movie I was referencing, Reefer Madness. So yeah, they showed it to us in school. Uh, and then Nancy is writing further. The reason why you cannot use a pharmaceutical company is because they are, why you cannot sue a pharmacy is because they are a corporation, not a person. Uh, which he's calling a serious glitch in civil and criminal law. Well, there have been lawsuits launched in the United States against large corporations. They have tort law, where class action suit, that's the Aaron Brockovich movie, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, and all the people who have been suffering from damage to the water table in that area of Hinkley, I think it was California, sued Pacific Gas and Electric. But it's hard because the pharmaceutical industry, thalidomide, what I've read on that is that the pharmaceutical companies basically, they drag the legal process. They'd have discovery and deferrals and just drag the process out so long, so that most of the victims of their pharmaceutical product were dead before they could even collect on any award that they might have been given. Uh, and then Nancy's writing, funny but true. The reason that Wacky Tobacco, Mary Jane, I love all the names, was banned in the first place, and I have read this as well, is that it was actually hemp, and that DuPont came up with synthetic fibers that hemp textile outlasted for years. And I've heard that as well, that hemp had a lot of textile and even hemp oil industrial applications. And the competitors, too, that had competing products didn't want hemp on the market. And because cannabis is in the hemp family, it got rid of competition. Uh, and then Nancy goes on to say that hemp was banned and DuPont thrived. And then she's talking about how Joe Rogan, they on CNN, they were calling it horse paste. And so, absolutely, it's getting back to Joe Rogan, pick that back up. That was so disgusting. And then the Lancet Medical Journal, what many consider to be the top of the heap, the most prestigious medical journal in the eyes of some. They published a paper that was a study done that showed that ivermectin was not only ineffective but also dangerous. And so immediately studies that had been just were getting started into investigating ivermectin as a potential treatment for COVID were halted. Oh, well, the Lancet, the world's most preeminent medical journal, they publish peer-reviewed. This is peer-reviewed science, and that's another thing. People think peer-reviewed science means settled, fact, done, and that's what happened. Oh, it's done. Ivermectin, dangerous. Can't use it for COVID. Get rid of it. Stop the studies. But peer-reviewed articles in a paper, even the Lancet, are not the final word. And proof of that is the fact that that paper had to be retracted because the data the authors used was fraudulent. And the company that published the paper, called Surgisphere, had only 3 employees. One, a doctor who was fighting multiple malpractice suits. The second officer at the company, Surgisphere, was a writer of science fiction, and the third was an exotic dancer, a stripper. And they got a paper published, peer-reviewed, to the Lancet. How? There is within academia in general, not just medical science, but across academia, there is a precept that is called publish or perish. You always will hear, or you often hear, we're pleased to be interviewing this individual in this academic field. He is the author of 115 peer-reviewed articles. And the more peer-reviewed articles you have published in whatever field you're in, anthropology, whatever, that but if you're not publishing, then you're perishing. And there's within the academic community, there is known to be something of a quid pro quo system. And if you don't know Latin, quid pro quo just means you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You review my article, I'll review yours. You help me get mine published, I'll help you get yours published. And I haven't read the data in a while, but the number of peer-reviewed articles that later get retracted is mind-blowing. How many? So when someone says peer-reviewed, as if it's settled science, I just look at them sideways and say, why are so many peer-reviewed articles pulled? How did a science fiction company with a doctor under fighting off malpractice suits, publish a paper based on fraudulent data? How did that get through peer review? Because peer review is not the end all and be all that it is made out to be. And then Nancy says it wasn't ivermectin. What the Lancet published was against hydroxychloroquine. No, the article that was published by Surgisphere, and I'm fairly certain of this. And I'm just typing it out. Okay. Surgisphere controversy. Immediately auto-populated. And this is in the National Institutes of Health. The high-profile retraction of 2 COVID studies stunned the scientific community earlier this year and prompted calls for reviews of how science is conducted, published, and acted upon. The warning signs had been there all along. Okay. Lancet, May 22nd, 2020, retracted. You're right, Nancy. Thank you. Hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine, with or without macrolide, for treatment of COVID-19, a multinational registry analysis. Okay, so that was oh no, wait a minute. I'm just reading from the article, and this is published again, I got this from National Institutes of Health, and they direct you to this article. It sounds absurd that an obscure US company with a hastily constructed website could have driven international health policy and brought major clinical trials to a halt within the span of a few weeks. Yet, that is what happened earlier this year when Illinois based Surgisphere Corporation began a publishing spree that would trigger one. Oh, great, it's behind a paywall. So, okay, here in The Guardian, Surgisphere, whose employees include a sci-fi writer and adult content model, provided database behind Lancet and New England Journal of Medicine hydroxychloroquine stories. Okay, so Nancy, kudos, thank you. Not ivermectin, but rather hydroxychloroquine. And if anyone wants to read that article, so you know I'm not speaking out of my nether regions. I got the news right, but I got the drug wrong. Thank you, Nancy, for correcting me. I always thought it was ivermectin. In fact, it was hydroxychloroquine. But all the other things I said were true. Just where I said where I said ivermectin, I should have said hydroxychloroquine. The World Health Organization and a number of national governments have changed their COVID-19 policies and treatments on the basis of a flawed data from a little-known US healthcare analytics company, also calling into question the integrity of studies published in some of the world's most prestigious medical journals. Um, a Guardian investigation can reveal the US-based company Surgisphere, whose handful of employees include a science fiction writer and an adult content model, has provided data for multiple studies on COVID-19 co-authored by its chief executive, but has so far failed to adequately explain its data or methodology. I'll leave you to read the article yourself. Do not put my bottom line end this off is um, to remind, ask questions. Do not put blind hope, faith, trust into any industry. And that includes the industrial medical complex, because the industrial medical complex doctors are not gods, even though they think they are. Even though Anthony Fauci thinks he is science, he's not. He's a flawed, broken, ultimately sinful man, no different from you, no different from me, and is prone to every human failing as anyone else. And one of those failings is greed, avarice, the desire to be held in high esteem. And man, it gets annoying. Uh, And then Nancy went on to say, with respect to hydroxy, or droxy, a lot of people called it, that it was removed 2 months before in most pharmacies in Europe, Canada, US, you name it. Well, the thing is, had an effective treatment for COVID come out before December of 2020, if something had been found to be efficacious in treating COVID, like if hydroxychloroquine was an effective treatment, if ivermectin was, if anything else was, then the pretext for authorizing a vaccine that hasn't gone through the proper clinical trial, a separate phase one, separate phase two, separate phase three. They would not have been able to give an emergency use authorization. The emergency is there's nothing else out there that works, because we looked at a fraudulent paper in the Lancet that said hydroxychloroquine was dangerous. Um, And then Nancy's writing, chloroquine actually, Fauci published that it was the cure for SARS or SARS-CoV-1, but not good enough for SARS-CoV-2. I don't remember that specifically, but there was so much misinformation, disinformation being promoted by the Anthony Fauci's of this world. He said at the beginning that COVID was more than 10 times as deadly as flu. Like, as bad as flu is, COVID's 10 times deadlier. And that was a lie. So much misinformation, disinformation. Uh, Danny's bowing out. I'm bowing out too. I've got to work tomorrow. And again, uh, thanks to Nancy for pointing that out, and Danny and Whale and everyone else who showed up. I'll have some more content coming up in the ensuing days. Until then, Sunday will be the next one. Might be time to go back into the political front. Few things have happened. The Liberals are one seat away from a majority now after this guy Cross, this forget Ma, um, and there is talk of Chinese interference. Are they involved in trying to build up Carney to a majority? We're in trouble in so many ways, but if you rest in this word, if you get into relationship with the Son, get to know the Father, find peace, joy, comfort in this world, even as troubles are all around, sparking up like ashes from a campfire, and still find peace, comfort, and joy. And you can know that the Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore, because this life is not the end. There's no pharmaceutical product on the market that is going to stop you from ultimately we're all going to judgment. Whether you like it or not, it's coming. We're all going to die. There's the first death, and then there's the second death. If you want to avoid that second death, get into relationship. So I'll end it the way I always do. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord God Almighty make his face to shine upon you, and may he grant you peace. And as I always say, there is peace to be found, even in a crazy upside down world. And Nancy has given me one last quote, archive of something. I'll check it out after I end the video. Not allowing me to do it just yet. Let's try it again. There we go. I'll check that out after. Good night, everyone. Hope to see you back. If you made it to the end, a little over an hour. Sometimes I go longer than this. You're welcome to hit like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Would love to hear comments down below. What do you think about the pharmaceutical industry? Do you think it's treated that the broader industrial medical complex has the trappings of the old Roman Catholic Church? What are your thoughts, views, and opinions on it? Fill the comment field down below, and hope to see you back. And thanks for watching. Good night now.